All right, good. Mr. Chair, would you do the honors of starting your subcommittee?
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get situated here.
Okay.
Oh, one second, please. I'm so sorry.
All right.
I'm still at school. 1 second, please.
Okay. I can start for you and you can pop in.
If you don't mind, I'll be right there.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you, everybody. We are in another leg of conservation and development, and some of the committees that we have, agencies that we have now are going to be seen. We're going to talk to the Office of Workforce Strategy, then after that, Department of Economic and Community Development. So with that, I'm going to start since we have a quick 30 minutes. We can blend in a little bit, but probably 30 minutes. With Office of Workforce Strategy and Kelly Valeris. Thank you very much for being with us, and thank you for providing us with an overview. I hope everybody has had a chance to look at it. If not, I would recommend that you look at the overview, because I'll be honest, we've been asking for it for a while and trying to understand what your budget was and what your allocations were and how they were going in with workforce strategy. How long has Office of Workforce Strategy been in operation, Kelly? Can you tell us?
Yeah, so we were started by executive order in 2020, and I started in this role in July. And in 2021, we were codified as an independent state agency with an APO designation to the governor's office. And last legislative session in 2023, we received a budget expansion from 4 to 9 plus 1 from for cannabis, so 10, but that funding came from a different line item for the 10th, and with our administrative purposes only status moving to DECD.
Okay. So can you first tell us how many people are in your staffing first?
Sure, I can do
Senator
that.
Hartley, Senator Hartley, are you here? Oh, she just... Okay. So how many staff do you have right now, Kelly?
Of course, that's not the document that I have in front of me at the moment.
sorry.
One moment, and I will find that for you because it's kind of a complicated answer. Of course, I'm very sorry.
That's okay. That's right. We can get that because so you were appropriated $70 million. Was that a bond or was that an actual?
Those were ARPA dollars. And that is for a program that we run called Career Connect. The nice thing about these funds is that we utilize them for short-term job training programs in high demand sectors. And these funds were unencumbered in the, they had a more open eligibility than the WIOA funding that traditionally comes down. So we were able to serve more people who might have just fallen outside of the WIOA eligibility for income, but that were still affected by COVID and still low income populations.
Okay. So when you said they were not as encumbered as WIOA dollars, can you explain that?
Sure. So to be utilized, to be eligible for WIOA, you have to meet certain income requirements and you have to prove that. So if you're talking to, say, a disconnected youth who might not be living at home and be estranged from their family, you would need to get family income, your social security card, your birth certificate. Those are things that may be difficult and barriers for that population to obtain those documents and prove eligibility, where in the ARPA funding, there is a self-attestation to say that you meet a low income status, and have been affected by COVID. And at this point, everyone has pretty much been affected by COVID. But we've been able to really reach the population of people that we're trying to serve. So through the demographics, we are pulling people from the most economically depressed areas of Connecticut, and making sure that they have access to the programming there. Approximately 43% are Black or African American, and there is a percentage of people also that choose not to self-identify, so that number could be higher, or identify as more than one race is 12%. And we have approximately an even amount of men and women who are taking advantage of the programs.
Okay, and when you say 43% were Black or African American, what about Latino? Do you identify with Latino or Hispanic?
Yes, so 23% of them are Latino.
Okay. Okay. So going into your report, I think we can all read the outline, which you very nicely said, and your staffing is included in your outline, so that we can all find that one. So let's go into the Career Connect grants that you have. You have obligations of 66 million, and you have expenditures of 29 million, and this is since 2020 or since 2021 or 2022? The
This
funding.
is since 2021, when the contracts went into place.
Mhm. Okay. And you have multiple contracts. I thought I saw in here, you have award and contract execution process, but approximately how many contracts do you have currently in existing with you with the 66 million?
There's 17 contracts and 19 awards. So the workforce boards and community-based organizations were funded.
Okay. And when you were doing the contracts, or what did you use as your determinations for things that you did awards and contracts for?
Sure. So we set out a broad RFP process. We looked at the industry sectors that were most affected by COVID and had the largest demand, not only today, but historically and into the future. So we really focused on manufacturing, IT, healthcare, clean energy, infrastructure, CDL licensing, and we actually included childcare in our RFP process. We also looked at making sure that the funding was spread out regionally across the state, in those areas of demand. And so we received, boy, it's been a few years now, over 150 applications, I believe, for the funding, with an amount, I think that was around $450,000 of $450 million of requested dollars. So we went through a very comprehensive review process with a rubric, and had the rubrics, all of them scored by the same 3 people. And then we looked at who made the cut with regards to how they scored on the rubrics. And that's how we determined what was going to be awarded. And then we also had to look at the funding, because everyone asked for more money that we had to give. As you can imagine, so almost everyone received about a 50% haircut based on what they requested. And so in the document I sent over to you, it gives you, who was awarded what. But the average, awards were, in the $2 to $6 million range. So we wanted to make sure that we were substantial in those awards, that people could actually get things accomplished there. And so we set out, that framework, including making sure that the workforce boards were working together, and one of our primary program providers is a community college system. They're not the only program provider, but we wanted to make sure that we were being able to build out programming that really met the demand by employers and utilizing stackable credentials. And we use the manufacturing pipeline initiative as a model to replicate across the state.
Representative Datham.
So that was quicker than I was expecting. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank
Don't
you
have a lot,
for your-
we don't have a lot of time, so don't.
I
give me
know,
a-
just very quickly, thank you.
Okay.
I really wanted to follow up on the career services pipeline for the IDD community. We had a IDD caucus meeting this week, and we heard from folks, and so many people were saying that they are really kind of stressed out about the career services and the focus on that. I know a report's not due out for a while, but this was part of the Public Act 23-137 in Section 11. And I think we may need some funds to do that, and I was just wanted to get your input on that. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's my only question.
Is this an RFP that you're doing on YouTube right now? You're missing my joke.
I'm sorry. No, I need another cup of coffee. No, yes, not for me. It's just, I want to support this community, and I'm really
Absolutely.
concerned that
Okay.
there's some cuts happening to the bill that we put forward. And again, this is something I heard from a number of folks yesterday at the Capitol.
Just
in the
so that we can keep everything moving. There are probably about 7 people on here could ask about a different industry. So let's try and work it through so
We
that
can have you can answer
We'll have
the
a follow-up.
committee in
We'll have a
writing
follow-up.
if you want to
We'll
have
have
a follow-up.
Happy to respond in writing. I'll just briefly say that we fully support the IDD community. One of the grants that was funded under Career Connect is to Ability Beyond, and they're actually working with Middlesex Community College on a manufacturing program for people with autism. That program has launched this past fall or early winter, and we are really excited to see the outcomes of that and using that as a model to move forward. And so we will provide additional information in writing.
we can have a second follow-up for everyone. I'm sure we'll need one. Representative Khanna.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for this information. I just wanted to, on the grants that you have out, so on a lot of them, what's been drawn down so far is about half of what the total amount is. Are these going to be fully drawn down? And, what are your metrics for the success of the project or the grant?
Absolutely. We have a lot of success metrics. We are tracking the number of people who are registering for the program. So currently we have 6,600 people who have gone through the entire registration process. 3,430 are actually currently or have completed job training programs. And we still have, as of the snapshot, over 3,200 people that are waiting for job training programs. So we have an unprecedented demand for these programs. We still have until the end of 2025 to complete the spend down of the ARPA dollars. And we know we're going to meet that deadline prior to that date. We also have completion and job obtainment data as well. And so we are completing folks at a very high rate. Programs are starting and stopping and are at different lengths. So it's hard to draw a defined completion or enrollment versus completion versus placement because the time frame is all over, but they are all trending upward, and we have a really good success rate out of these programs.
Thank you.
On that same note, since you were developed because of COVID with COVID funds, do all of your funding, does all of your funding have to be expended by 2025?
It does for Career Connect, and the other funding source that we have of federal dollars is a grant from the EDA, and it's called the Good Jobs Challenge Grant. We're really excited about this $23.4 million. Connecticut received the largest award out of the United States. There was over 500 applications and 32 awards. We were the only state that received a statewide award, and we're working with, I believe it's 10 of our regional sector partnerships that were in existence when we put the award together. These are the places where we bring business community together to talk about what their needs are, and we respond to that. And so we have programming happening in each of the 10 regional sector partnerships that are funded with this money for workforce development programming. These just kicked off late last fall. So data and outcomes are just starting to come in, and I'd be happy to share that with you as we get through the first round of training, and we can share those jobs. But we're looking to fund 2,000 people going through job training programs with those funds.
So it's called Good Job?
The Good Jobs Challenge is the
Good
name
Job.
of the grant that we received from EDA.
And the shelf life on this one is how long?
The end of 2026.
2026, okay. Representative Porter.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your presentation. Two quick questions. What are the areas that you're serving? I know you said it's, the depressed areas in the state. And then the other question I have is, I know you mentioned manufacturing, some other things that you're doing. Is there any consideration or any plan to implement things like robotics, AI, like where we're moving technology-wise?
So yes, with the Good Jobs Challenge funding, there is that opportunity to fund enhanced technologies. With regards to the ARPA dollars, we contracted all of those funds out already. So there isn't additional funding to add to new programming. But we are also working on a few other projects, and one being the Tech Talent Accelerator. So this is an award from the Tech Talent Fund that resides at DECD. The first $1 million, and then the program was so successful, we had the second $1 million investment. And what this does is it brings in an intermediary, the New England Board of Higher Education, with the Business Higher Education Forum, and they become the intermediary between our regional sector partnerships and the businesses and our academic programs. The funding ran through CSCU and then is now working with 17 higher ed academic institutions across the state, and they're building out really innovative badge programs, courses, curriculum enhancement on the higher level, the new emerging technologies. So cybersecurity, gaming, that type of thing. And so I can get you more information on the programs that are being funded.
Thank you. And if you could also provide, I'm not sure if you have or not, but if you haven't, in the report you sent over, the folks that you have the contracts with the ARPA funding and the higher ed. Okay, I'm driving, so I can't, but I'll take a look at it. And then the higher ed schools that are participating, if that was included. If not, you could provide that, please.
I believe it was, but I will double check and make sure that you have that information in the programs that are there.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. I think that in your report, you're pretty good. You did great. Yeah, you explained who you're partnering with and where they are. Now, I guess from an outside perspective, how does one get a grant from Workforce Strategy? How do you apply for those? Because as Representative Datham she has a great idea and she wants to know how to do. So, I mean, you've got 17 contracts, 19 awards, but how did they get to you And how do people get to you now? Because trust me, there are a lot of people out there with a lot. I'd like to send them to you.
And
Um,
I would love to take them. Unfortunately, we do not have additional funds to give out. All of our funds have been allocated in the Good Jobs Challenge and in Career Connect. So we did a very comprehensive RFP process, as I mentioned, and we had so many fantastic projects in the first round that we did not have any additional money to give out for additional projects at this time.
So, um, so, so, so the money, all the 66 million that you got from the ARPA funds are already obligated. They're obligated in contracts that have been created with the entities that you've got identified here. Okay. Then how are we evaluating the success of your programs? How many
Absolutely.
people, how many people has each one of these contracts contacted with? What was your per capita cost for each one of them that's going through? And how are we sustaining this once your ARPA dollars go up? And that's a lot of stuff to answer. But I think,
Yeah, and we can provide all that information for you. We're collecting all of that data. I believe there's 70 points of data that we're collecting on each person and in each program. So we're excited about the opportunity to really collect this robust data to be able to show what a system like this could generate. And, you know, part of it is the portal that we've created that is a single virtual point of entry for people. So over 17,000 people have come into our portal, and about half of them have actually registered for programming. And so we're excited about that. And we have some additional upgrades that were happening with the portal based on another small $1.5 million grant that we received. But I'm happy to share with you all of the programmatic outcomes. Sustainability does become an issue. And so one of the focuses that we have this year is working on our data management systems across the workforce ecosystem. Right now, data is kept and collected and kept in many different forms by every individual institution, agency, workforce board. And so to collect and aggregate all of that data together requires a P20 win research study, which we do have one that's in process right now. But we're working with a philanthropy donation of $300,000 from the CT Project Fund, working with DOL, our workforce boards, and other state agencies, OPM, DAS. We're just doing our launch meeting in a week, and that will be able to help us identify all the different data management opportunities that we have and how do we build a more integrated system, because we have a lot of funding that gets sprinkled all over the place. And if we can kind of funnel all of that money into the best practice programs that we know work, we can amp up the system and hopefully have some level of sustainability by braiding funding sources together across agencies and funding sources to keep these programs up and running.
I think that's fantastic. I'm sure that a lot of people would have liked to have had an opportunity to be part of that, because there are a lot of great ideas that were out, and I don't think a lot of people knew that where the portal was, and I don't think that a lot of people understood the opportunities that were in front of them that we didn't even understand. I mean, I'm going to be very candid here. We didn't understand how things were funded. We didn't understand how things were overseen. We didn't. And it's taken a long time for us to get to that point, unfortunately. I don't like when we have the same entities working in different directions sometimes, and that makes it very, very hard to manage for a state. And so I appreciate that, but there are a lot of things that people have brought to all of us that probably, for example, the fact that we need we need teachers, we need childcare workers, we need healthcare workers. We've got a deficiency in healthcare workers in our own state agencies that is tremendous. And how are you addressing that in your funding that you have now?
Yeah, about a third of the funding is going between Good Jobs Challenge and Career Connect to healthcare positions. Most of those are the shorter certificate type certifications, CNAs, phlebotomists, medical assistants, surgical instrument sterilization, pharmacy techs. But we also have another project called the Healthcare Horizons, which was another $35 million appropriation of ARPA dollars. And thank you to all of you who passed that legislation. And this is another partnership with our higher ed institutions and our hospitals to build out innovative, accelerated programs in nursing and mental health. And so we have part of the money was to expand faculty. So faculty shortages are a very large reason why we have a small output. And so part of it was to expand faculty, to expand access for underserved students through scholarships, and then for higher ed institutions to work with hospitals and other healthcare facilities on accelerated programming. And so we do have outcomes of that as well that I believe are in the document that we sent you, but I'll double check and make sure that you have that. This has been another very successful model for working with higher ed institutions and building out curriculum.
I like the idea of the higher ed institutions. Those are huge, and it's a double win in my thoughts, because our higher ed institutions need the support, but also our industries need the support too. How with that 35 million, what is your projected number of nurses that you are going? Because if you look at the number of positions and the types of positions that our agencies have been trying for, CNAs and phlebotomists was not on that list. It was nurses. It was maybe operating facilitators. I mean, things on a little bit higher scale. So how many of that 35 million is going to actually translate into that?
So we are looking for 1,200 students to be supported with this particular funding, and also increasing faculty to expand capacity by 750. So currently we're 90% to goal on faculty, 50% to goal on providing the scholarships. And we've created 8 innovative programs out of that. The other thing we're doing in healthcare, which you'll be seeing very shortly, is we convened a working group around the healthcare shortages based on legislative a bill last session. That report, I think, is extremely insightful and very specific. It is being reviewed by OPM for their approval for all of you, and it should be ready for view for you really any day now. And we're happy to walk through that report with you on some really great recommendations. But one thing that we're also working closely on with CSCU is building those stackable credentials. So right now there is no pathway from a CNA to an RN. And so building that pathway program, which will require some changes to some of our state rules around the certification process, but making sure that if someone starts as a CNA, they can start an LPN program and work as a CNA until they earn their LPN, and then work as an LPN until they earn their RN. And we feel that this is going to be a great way to address the shortages kind of throughout the process, and bringing people from those real entry-level positions that we know are high turnover, high burnout rate, low paying jobs, to those higher RN. I mean, RNs are starting at 70,000+ a year, and and going up. So we're working on those pathways and understand the priority there.
Well, thank you. I'm kind of baffled because I know Norwalk used to have a program like that, and I know because I remember going through the certification with them, and I remember Southern had a program that they had developed. So I didn't to say that we didn't have it. I did not. That's kind of
Yeah,
very-
I think the clarification there is that our community colleges don't have a 4-credit LPN program at the moment. They are working to reinstitute that. And so when you have an LPN from the for-profit schools, there's no credit associated with it, so it's a dead end. Same with the CNA, it's a dead end without credit. So we need to bring it back into the credit-based institutions to be able to do that.
Thank you. And yes, you're right. Well, they both had them. That's the part that I'm trying to understand where they disappeared to. Representative Harris. Representative Harrison? Yeah. There
Thank
you go.
you. I think I was raising my hand along the same line, that I'm a little confused by it. I know for sure that, my daughter, listen, worked as an RN as she worked her way. So she did that. She worked up the steps. So I'm equally knowing she did it and she finished up during COVID.
Let
I'm
me
baffled
clarify.
why you're saying that there's not this pathway.
Let me
I
clarify.
don't get it.
So the work that you do as a CNA does not get applied to the work that you would do as an LPN. So you basically have to start over again with your clinicals and the academic content. So you can do it. You can go and do all of those steps as your daughter did, but there is not a pathway to bring forward the experience of your clinicals and the education that you received to the next step. So it's kind of like starting over again a little bit. Now there's a lot of connectivity between each of those steps, but they're not a direct overlap of each other. So there's some work to do to streamline that process and make it a faster process so people can bring with them some of those clinical hours that are so difficult to get and there's a lot of hours, as you know, that your daughter needed to put in on those clinicals. So we want to be able to make that an easier process so you can take some of the time that you spent as a CNA and apply some of those hours that you worked towards your clinical hours in LPN. That does not exist right now. And that's the bridges that we're trying to build and not having to have to go start over from your academics, that you can bring maybe LPN in a credited program. LPN loosely fits into the first year of a 2-year RN program, but we don't have that built out right now because we don't have any credited programs.
What you're describing is articulation between different.
Yes, exactly. Thank
And
you.
we had articulation at one point. I don't know where it disappeared because I'm with Representative Harrison because I had a lot of students that did CNA and then we went through the different courses and we had an articulation. Somehow it disappeared in the woodworks, but
Well, I
Representative.
believe that the majority of LPNs work in elder care facilities, and the hospitals kind of didn't have a lot of LPNs, and so the demand for the LPNs went down, and now we're seeing that demand coming back. And so that's where the renewed sense of urgency to bring back something that worked that kind of fell apart over time.
Okay, thank you. Representative Harrison, are you good?
I think so. Thank you. I guess, right. To be determined, to be continued, as you say, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Happy to have a follow-up conversation with you, especially when we have the report that we can share with you all on healthcare.
I think we'll have a conversation with you and our CSCU systems and everything to talk about articulation because I remember the issues, but it is past our time and I don't see any other hands and I want to respect the chairs because they've got a few more people. So I'm going to see if Rep. Gibson or Senator Hartley are raring to go. Yeah,
Thank you very much for your time.
thank you. Thank you very much. And we'll follow up with you for a couple of work groups because I know I'm going to get so many emails behind this conversation.
I'm happy to have follow-up conversations and work with you on these.
Senator Austin and I, we're just saying, oh boy. So, Rep. Gibson, hi there.
Madam
Hi there,
Chair,
Madam Chair.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
I just want to put one item on
There she
the
is.
record if
I was
I
looking for
can, while we've got our OWS Chief of Staff with us. And that is, we're talking about the healthcare crisis, the LPNs and that career ladder. We've got 1,000 students who are kind of locked in no man's land as a result of the Stone Academy. And they were, in the occupational school. I don't know that story, but I guess, Kelly, I just want to make a note that, I'm thinking we ought to be reaching out to them. We ought to be trying to make that bridge because right now they're in no man's land, and it's a cohort of students who are ready to go, want to go, but need some help here.
Thank you for that question. We work very closely with Commissioner Larson at the Department of Higher Education. And we're also working closely with the workplace, the Workforce Board in Bridgeport, who's leading the healthcare programs for Career Connect. And we are making very concerted efforts in reaching out to those students, bringing them into the Career Connect programming, and also have some funding of the Career Connect dollars that can help some of those students with those last steps that they need to get their LPN. So we have been working very closely with them, and I'm happy to follow up with more information on that for you.
Yeah, thanks. I would so appreciate that.
Thank you.
Senator, it's all yours, Senator.
Thank you.
Okay.
I see Senator Kushner's hand up, and I don't know if that's on this conversation.
It is.
Yeah,
it is. Thank
Yeah,
you, Joan. I just really want to thank you, Senator Hartley, for mentioning those people in that Stone Academy situation. And I think what we really have to, and I think this is what you were trying to say, there are people who did not get close enough, and they invest. I have a constituent who spent $35,000, a low wage person spent $35,000 on the program and didn't get any of the benefit of the legislation that we passed to help those students. And so I think the idea of reaching out to all of them that were enrolled in that program, because she had quite a bit of time in the program, I think you can find some really good connections there. So I appreciate what you said, Senator Hartley. That's really important.
Yeah, thank you so much. So Rep. Gibson, what's your pleasure here? Because I think we next have on deck our DECD team.
Yes, but I see Rep. Harrison has her hand up.
Okay.
I
Go ahead.
Have we changed venues? Otherwise, I just have a comment for Kelly if she's still there.
I'm still here.
Yeah, she's there.
Oh, good. So thank you, Senator Hartley, for bringing up Stone Academy. I was going to do that in my, questioning, and I completely concur. And I can tell you, I have a constituent here that, is waitressing, so happy, to go through Stone Academy, was looking forward to a change in her life. And unfortunately, she falls in the gap of starting the program, only getting so far, and is just totally discouraged, had put forth money. And I really think we need to do something for all of them, no matter where they fell in the program. That's my only comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Harrison. I think we all agree. You just have to figure out what that is and how we can execute it. So Rep. Gibson, are you with us?
I'm here. I'm ready to switch, I believe.
Yeah, okay, so we'll go into DECD and if you want to kick it off, that's fine. Or if you want me to, that's fine.
Go ahead. You can go ahead, Senator.
Okay, and I see the team is with us. I want to commend Commissioner O'Keefe. Oh, it still says designate. How long is that going to hang out?
It hangs out until there's a vote on the House
A
floor.
vote, a vote. I know. Yeah, we haven't been in session. Okay. So thank you for very plenary response here. And so interesting enough, you start off by talking about marketing. And I guess I just would like to opine on the fact that you know, we've got what, $4 million line item in there. Is that what the line item is this round?
4.5.
Okay, 4.5. I lost that 500. And you know, it's just as we compare ourselves to our surrounding states, you know, we're really kind of not even treading water. We're below the water line, and I'm not sure if there's, you know, from your vantage point, Commissioner, any ability to work within our, as we use the term, available resources to try to scale that promotion. I mean, you know, you're seeing Rhode Island, we're seeing individual cities like Fall River, you know, just kind of going out there and really, you know, pounding the airwaves with their, you know, their promos.
Yeah, no, and as you know, we did ask for and did receive $1 million in incremental spend for our marketing budget. So by the way, I agree with your point. You know, there are other states and even other cities who are being more aggressive with their marketing budgets. But I think the answer is no, in terms of there being incremental that we foresee being able to work with incremental to what we already have. I think the plan is to scale it with that incremental $1 million. And then, you know, as time goes on and perhaps as there's more room in future budgets, we'll hope to scale it further.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the framework within which we are operating here.
Exactly.
So on the hospitality industry, that was something that we asked you to come back to us with. Can you just kind of summarize for us, because we've got a couple of proposals that are, you know, floating around too, and you know, just so that we're looking at the industry, you know, in a complete way.
And your question, Senator, is to summarize that
yeah, I mean,
where we are in the industry,
yeah, you know,
our view of
post-pandemic, you know, small businesses that shuttered and didn't open, new ones that are maybe, you know, being opened. You know, how is our industry? How is the hospitality industry faring? Kind of, you know, where we are in 2024. Yeah,
it's a little difficult for me to summarize because, as you know, the hospitality industry is not just one amorphous blob. You know, it is statewide, and there are regions that are recovering more quickly than others. I would say that the trend lines that I've seen since getting involved in public service last July have been quite constructive and quite positive. You know, so just the influx of new residents and the small business, which includes the hospitality sector, the openings rate we're seeing, it compares very favorably nationally. But I still think we have a ways to go. And I would particularly amplify, there are some urban centers that have not recovered at the pace that I would like to see, including Hartford. Anthony, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that.
Yeah, and I think that's a combination of forces because, you know, we've got the new dynamic of, you know, kind of a hybrid remote. So we don't quite have, you know, the feet on the street that we did. And it's about, you know, trying to reinvent themselves so as to, quite frankly, counteract, you know, that loss.
Yeah, and I think that's right. I think as the 5-day structured work week deconstructed, you just see less foot traffic in our urban cores. You know, and for knowledge work, I don't see it coming back to 5 days a week. I don't think it stays completely virtual, but I also don't think it comes back to 5 days a week. So some of the impact on our foot traffic, particularly in those urban cores that center around knowledge work, I think is likely permanent.
Yeah, and Commissioner, could you help me out? I think we might have very briefly touched on this in your presentation to us last time, but we had these situations where we allowed restaurateurs to bring their operations, their seating and serving and so forth outside, and many of them liked that. Their customers liked that, and then we've got the local ordinances and the town zoning. Do you have any view on that?
And I don't have a deeply informed view, if I'm honest. I have not looked at that particular issue. My lens is an economic growth lens. And so what I would say is if there are opportunities that allow our hospitality industry to grow, if there is demand from consumers and we can make it work within local ordinances, then I'm all for it. But I can't sit here and say to you that I've dug deeply into those specific nuances. I have not. I don't know if anyone else on the team has.
Yeah, Commissioner, it's Anthony. If you wouldn't mind, I would love to jump in here. One of the things that we did see this during the pandemic, that these ordinances allowed our restaurants to safely serve people outside. But what we also found during that time was this added a certain vibrancy to our towns that maybe we didn't quite see before. And so much of it came alive when we were all isolated. And I think this is one of the things that we need to assess in being able to work with municipalities to extend even further. I think the future of our continued growth, not just economically, but population-wise, is dependent upon it, because that vibrancy adds so much to the flavor, along with arts and culture in different municipalities, and it makes these great places to live. And so I look at this not just from the lens of tourism, but from that quality of community. And we're finding that tourism and quality of life are the things that have helped increase our population in the last couple of years. And that businesses, some of the major criteria have changed for why they invest in places. So what it used to be, through at least through site selections, businesses were looking at cost of doing business and economic incentives from local and state governments as the number 1 and 2 criteria. And now it's changed to quality of life and workforce being the number 1 and number 2 criteria, 2 things that we really stand up and stand tall with. So, this type of ordinance tremendously helps that.
Oh, and so Anthony, I happen to totally agree with you. It's what I'm hearing on the street from restaurateurs. But I'm also hearing, Connecticut is the land of steady habits and, local control. So how do we finesse that?
I think this has to be with maintaining that same structure. I think that's it's a Sisyphean task in changing that structure. So I think this has got to be one-to-one outreach, and we can cascade it through our tourism districts. But at the end of the day, there's a real benefit to municipalities to allow this to happen, to allow restaurants to be out there, and to allow it helps with the vibrancy and people coming in. So if they know there's a thriving downtown scene, it brings people in who might not otherwise be there. I mean, I think case in point, I know the town of Chester, once a month they have their first Fridays, and they shut the entire street down, not just for single outdoor restaurants, but many others. So I think giving examples and data, and even helping them to be able to do this and provide examples is probably the model for us in Connecticut.
Yes, and I guess I'll leave you with this. How is it that we can help them to do this? Because I think timing is really important. We're post-pandemic now, but there's not a lot of time to not move on this. Representative Dillon.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I just wanted to follow up very briefly on the comment about foot traffic. I had noticed last fall that in the little business district in my district, Westville Village, which Mr. Anthony actually visited Lyric Hall there for a Main Street meeting. And that's really important because we need to feel connected to Hartford. I have noticed last fall that McDonald's was doing delivery. And that seemed, I was surprised. So I started going to a lot of places that I don't usually go. I very often just go to one or two places that are part of my comfort zone. And I was very startled to see how many of our restaurants in that whole strip are relying very heavily on takeout. And they don't have the foot traffic. And I may have missed it, but is there a particular strategy? Is that going to be a permanent business model now? Is that an artifact of the pandemic, or is the reliance on takeout something that we can reverse to make our to increase our foot traffic?
Yeah, I don't, commenting more on my experience, looking at some of these companies, in my prior life as an investor, I looked at some of these companies providing these delivery services. I don't think it's an artifact of the pandemic. I think it's a shift in consumer behavior, where consumers, particularly younger consumers, are looking to be able to get what they want, when they want, however they want it. And restaurants responded, so restaurants will often have multiple delivery services they're working with. And most of the restaurants that I do talk to, having not spoken to the ones you're referencing, but most of the restaurants I speak to view it as an incremental channel of revenue, so that they don't actually look at it disfavorably. They look at it quite positively, because it just adds, restaurants are about yield. So it just adds to the amount they're able to sell.
Well, I noticed McDonald's because they had it on the big sign, and so I started going to the little mom and pop places. I wondered, maybe it's because they need to make their facilities more friendly to families with young children. I know that there's one restaurant that's very family friendly, Camacho's, and it's really thriving. And it doesn't rely as heavily on takeout as some of the others. But if it's a change in the business model, I don't know. I mean, that could have bad implications for what we usually expect in terms of spillover business to other kinds of merchants.
Yeah. Remember, the state of Connecticut was the #1 state for Gen Z movers last year. And these are young families moving to the state. That is when typically we do pick up population. And these are digital natives. So there are groups of folks now, generations, that are just deeply comfortable, pressing a button and having whatever they need show up. But I actually think I will say, I think it's a positive. I think you're looking at it as potentially dilutive, because I realize those people aren't necessarily coming into the restaurant, but oftentimes these are folks that the shift in consumer behavior has been towards takeout rather than cooking at home. That's more where the energy is coming from, not necessarily from the restaurant experience itself.
Well, it's a change, so we'll probably talk about this again. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Maggie.
Yeah, thank you, Representative Dillon. If I'm missing your hand, colleagues, just give me a holler here, Bobby, if I'm missing anybody. But not seeing any other hands. The return to work for women. So I see Valerie Kelly's still on. But the only thing I ask, and you don't have to answer me right now, but maybe just can give it to us offline or respond by virtue of email. I saw the charts on our return to work for women, and we are almost not there, but almost where we were pre-pandemic. I guess I'm just wondering how we're comparing to our neighbor states, if you have such information, because we are doing a lot of things, with regard to childcare, in terms of making it more seamless for women to get back into the workforce. But that brings us to question number 5, and that's we have with us the head of the Social Equity Council, Ginny Ray Clay, hello, Ginny, how are you?
Hello,
So,
everyone.
yes, question?
No, I was saying hello.
Oh, hi. Yeah, so you provided us with an attachment, and some of these aren't labeled, and I'm wondering, is this the one that's color coded with the yellow and blue? Yes, it is.
EP color. Yeah, that's our
Yeah.
budget.
Yeah, okay, all right. I was having a hard time kind of identifying. There was no label on that. There was concern, I think, Ginny, from my colleagues, when we first kind of had the opportunity to look at the budget, the governor's proposals this year, about how the social equity fund was going to be, tasked going forward. And the underlying concern was, quite frankly, the premise upon which it was founded, and that was to be laser focused to raising those communities that were so exponentially affected by this scourge of drugs, and so I believe that was the concern. And so, can you speak to that for us with regard to the budget adjustments that have come forward with regard to the use of the Social Equity Fund?
So in the Office of Social Equity Council, in our budget, so the other funds are not budgeted to us, they're not appropriated to us. We have a small budget to operate on a regular basis to pay for programs and services. But then in our budget, we have for 2025, we have about $5 million that has been appropriated to the office to spend on reinvestment. There are other monies that will go to the fund that I understand need to be appropriated to us to spend on reinvestment.
And so in the presentation, the budget presentation, the governor had talked about, focusing target areas and you investing this social equity fund on that. And so the concern is that we stay with the original mission of the social equity fund. And so I'm just, allay our concerns, Ginny, that's
Okay.
all. Yeah.
All right. I'm sorry. Now I understand your question.
Yeah.
So what the council did to kind of come up with a plan of reinvestment is we went directly to disproportionately impacted communities. We spoke directly with residents, we spoke with stakeholders, and we asked them how they felt and what their thoughts were on reinvestment. What do they need in their communities? And so we had a series of community conversations last year. We had 16 conversations. We did a digital survey that we sent out all over the state. And we spoke to stakeholders, like I said, in our regular interaction with communities. Those communities gave us information on how they wanted us to spend money. So there were many things that kind of bubbled to the top that just happened to also be priorities of the governor. So childcare is something in the disproportionately impacted communities that was, I would say, probably number one. Access to childcare locally. There is a deep need for childcare as people come home from prison, as we have companies that are opening that work 24/7, as this kind of world is changing. People now have greater opportunity to work. And in most cases, people who are returning or just kind of getting into the work world, they don't get the 9 to 5. They get the 11 to 7, they get the 3 to 11, they get the weekend shifts. And so what they've said to us is, we can't go to work because we can't find appropriate childcare. So that was one of the things that we're looking at. In addition, people who are housing insecure. When people return from prison, they are often homeless. And because they are often homeless, they tend to go back to prison faster. And so we're looking at addressing, and those are just two of the things. We talk to youth. Kids want places to go. They want programs that are going to help them build for their future. And these are the things that our grassroots community organizations are doing, and they've asked us to help them to support those programs so that they can provide more services. And in a lot of cases, people are working second jobs to fund programs in their communities. And if they had more help, they had more access to funding and resources, they're saying to us that I could get a grant to buy chess sets for the program that I run, and I can stop working that second job to buy the chess sets, and I could build my program. I could focus on my kids. I can focus on, the program and making it a better opportunity for the people in my community and maybe even farther out. So all of the spending priorities that we are talking about come directly from the communities that are disproportionately impacted and the responses that we receive from them through our survey and through our community conversations.
Yes, and you've covered a lot of ground in a very short time, and building this, quite frankly, from nothing. So to that, I take my hat off to you and the council and what you've done. I do want to mention, okay, so you talked about, childcare and the connection and housing and the connection. And yes, obviously that's very apparent. But I mentioned a little bit earlier by one of my colleagues, Representative Porter, was the subject of robotics. And I know Kelly's probably still listening as well. And, one of the things that has become apparent to me is that, first of all, we understand what robotics is. It's kind of meeting kids where they are. I mean, so many times, manufacturing is, and I know we've got our CMO here too, somewhere, our Chief Manufacturing Officer, but, manufacturing is so off-putting to, kids. Like, really? No, not me, no how. But there's not that understanding of what the 21st century manufacturing is all about. And yet kids are so facile with technology. We always go to them, at least I do anyway, for all my technical problems. I go down about, 2 generations here. But, what I am observing is that in our urban centers, we really have I think a missed opportunity because our robotics programs, they're quite frankly, not on par with some of the other more well-endowed, educational districts. And I think if we are going to, give kids an insight into, a strong career path with great salary up and career growth, robotics is that introduction. And so I guess I just would like to ask from the Social Equity Council in terms of, your investments in communities, if in fact we might be able to target urban districts to have very fulsome robotics programs. Part of that is, the kids have to travel, they have to compete, they need a location. And a lot of times those are things that an urban district, they just can't bridge those gaps.
So thank you for that. And those are exactly the types of things that we are looking to fund. And those are the things that we're pushing. Robotics, STEM, STEAM also came to the top of conversations from our kids. And so programs that we will fund will be programs that if they need to transport kids to different competitions, if they need to buy supplies to build their programs. We did a pilot program last year. I think you are aware. We did $5.4 million into the community to kind of see how our process for reinvestment could work and how it could work expeditiously. So we use local grant-making partners to dispense and distribute the funds. They receive the applications, they rate, they rank, they review the applications, and then they distribute. But there's also a local community review team that goes over these applications who are very familiar with the community. And those programs were programs that got funding. So we would pay for a bus for kids to be transported to wherever it is that they needed to be transported, or if there was a different type of transportation that needed to happen. So those barriers are the very things that we have pushed and we have encouraged people to apply for funding for, to help build programs and remove barriers.
And I'll just leave you with this, Jenny. I mean, have we seeded with the Social Equity Council fund, an entire robotics program in a district that maybe didn't have one?
I'm not aware. So the pilot program was very short. It wasn't a lot of money. And so we are about to go out with our second tranche of money. And knowing what we know from the first round, we will most definitely be making sure that those programs that exist in those communities are aware of the funding and that they are applying. So we have a little bit more time to market these programs and to bring the awareness to the communities. Again, we are focusing on grassroots organizations, those organizations that may not normally, receive or have the ability. We're connecting them with fiduciaries if they're not a 501c3, which you need to be eligible for. And so we're pulling out all the stops. We're in the communities. We're talking to them. We're connecting with trusted messengers to make sure that these funds go directly to those types of organizations.
Yeah, that's great, because one of the things that we were doing is partnering, for example, with the University of Connecticut, because some of the urban programs, the thought was if we could get that cohort of kids into an academic environment, let them take a look. And so UConn, and we were engaged in conversations with them to actually allow the robotics team to compete at Gamble. Of course, it has to be off season. We're not going to compete with the women Huskies or the guys. They will throw us out soundly. But so it was send them over there during the off season and let them have a whole experience connecting, with an academic institution. Yeah, I see Paul's got his hand up. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, Senator Hartley, I just want to inform you that the Manufacturing Innovation Fund has funded a statewide robotics program, a $2.2 million investment to stand up robotics programs across the state and to provide equity in distressed communities for kids that don't have an opportunity to participate. So part of our objective is to make sure that we're creating 9 new robotics teams and making sure that any kid that wants to get involved specifically with FIRST Robotics has an opportunity to do so, and that a financial barrier won't exist to be able to do that. Ready CT is going to manage that program for the Manufacturing Innovation Fund. We are going to hire a statewide coordinator for FIRST Robotics. And since we've funded this, we've discovered another program called VEX Robotics that we will be looking at. I just sponsored their regional competition, and we'll be looking at funding VEX at the same level as FIRST Robotics when we get through the FIRST Robotics pilot. So again, that we can provide equity to my goal, my vision on robotics is any child in the state of Connecticut should have an equal opportunity to participate in a robotics program in the state of Connecticut. And the Manufacturing Innovation Fund has used a good tranche of our money to be able to do that. Additionally, our CTech school, our technical high schools are in the process of changing their electronics programs to robotics and automation. So now we have, if there are kids in middle school that are very interested in robotics and automation, they'll be able to go into our technical high schools where there will be full curriculum around robotics and automation. We're additionally talking to CT State about the introduction of robotics and automation, and all of our private and public four-year universities are either implementing or considering a robotics and automation program to meet the growing needs of industry, but also to serve the kids. So we're building a seamless K through 16 robotics and automation program so that anybody in the state of Connecticut that's interested will have an equal opportunity to be able to participate in that. So anything that the Social Equity Council is doing, I'm happy to partner with to make sure that we're both doing the same work and focusing in the same areas and same organizations, and that we're not looking at any kind of duplicative efforts. But I just wanted to update you on what's happening with robotics and automation with the Manufacturing Innovation Fund, our technical high schools, CT State, and all of our private colleges and universities.
Thank you so much, Paul. And that's a lot of work that's been done since we last talked about MIF engaging in a robotics program. So you have not identified the 9 new teams, or you have?
No, they are all, well, we have not identified them, but they are in alliance districts. So they are in underserved communities. as
Yeah.
to where we'll be identifying them. I'm sure Ready CT is working on this. We've just provided them with the funding, and I'm looking through here. It says the 33 lowest performing alliance districts is where we're going to focus on. So we're going to go to those districts, find out where they don't have teams, and if they don't have teams, we want to be able to put the effort in place, because creating a team requires sponsors, requires mentors and adults, but we want to be able to provide them with the funding for all of the equipment they need for the robots, all the fees that they need, all of, we have kids doing bake sales to raise money when they could be building robots. And I would rather them, not that I don't think they learn something from doing bake sales, I just would rather have them building robots than making cookies to, fund their robotics program. So I will, the alliance districts are certainly our underperforming districts. So we have not identified where they are yet, but as soon as Ready CT is up and running with this program, we'll have regular reports as to what their progress is, what districts they've identified, and what success we've had in standing up the programs.
Yeah, that's great, Paul. Robin, Representative Porter? I see she had her hand up, but
Yes, thank you, Senator Hartley.
Yeah.
Having trouble here getting to my buttons. You basically covered everything that I was gonna ask after he got us started with the program he's talking about. I'm very excited to hear that. And definitely excited to hear that you're looking at, because my question was, how are the schools being selected, and how can they apply and that kind of thing. What schools? And you actually answered that with alliance districts, which are, our struggling schools. There was something else I wanted, and now I can't read my own handwriting, so I'm not going to hold folks up, Senator Hartley.
don't
If
go
it comes
off the
back,
road, Robin.
look, if it comes back to me, I'll raise my hand again. But thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's this weekend, Paul. We've got our competition in Waterbury. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's Hartford this weekend and Waterbury next weekend. So yeah. Yep. Very excited. Mark Brzezinski will be at all of them.
Yeah, no, I know. We keep you well informed.
Yes.
I don't know. Oh, yes, Robin, go ahead. You got it.
Yes, it came back to me. It's because she actually wasn't on screen, but I just wanted to go back and thank Jenny Ray, especially for the work that the Social Equity Council is doing. I was at many of the community roundtables that she had, and you guys really listened well, and what you reported was really on point. So I just wanted to really thank you for that, and let you know that I'm looking forward to our meeting with our Social Equity Council folks and working on that piece of it. And just really appreciate the partnership. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Robin. Drive safely, and yes, kudos to Ginny. Okay, if there are no more questions, that was item 5. Oh yes, Rep. Sims, good to see you, sir.
Hello, Senator Hartley, and hello, everyone. I don't know if this is appropriate forum for this, but I live in Norwalk, and I along the water, and all the waterfront properties, we have a huge opportunity to take advantage of, of water taxis. And I was wondering if there has been any kind of discussion about maybe implementing an initiative like that will help some of the harborfront communities, the waterfront communities along Connecticut, to take advantage of that. One is going to create jobs. 2 is going to have cars off the road. More people on the water, and 3 is going to help with the tourism, with sightseeing and things of that nature. So I was just wondering if this has been any kind of conversations around that, and if so, what does that look like?
Thanks, Rep. Sims. Yeah, I think you're on, Commissioner.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any conversation specific to water taxis, but I did want to open it up to my team to see if others might be.
Thank you. It's Anthony, and apologies earlier, as my call may have dropped off. So if anything was asked, get me back. No, also aware of no specific conversations. Not that we would be against this type of initiative. I think the question would be, how would it get executed? We're not really structured within our organization to be able to prop up a program like this. I think it'd be one of the types of programs that if they, if money were to come, we would execute a grant to find a private partner to put this type of program into place.
Thank you, Anthony.
No, I appreciate that. And thank you, Senator Hartley.
Well, so Rep. Sims, I just want to do a follow on here. And coincidentally, Representative Harrison is with me, and I don't know if any of my other Commerce colleagues are, but we have before us a proposal on developing a plan and heads up, Commissioner, for the blue economy, of which, of course, this would fit in terms of scaling our opportunities and building our waterfronts. Water taxis clearly is one of them, and as you point out, they have all the ancillary benefits of not just tourism but also transportation. And I've been down in Norwalk. I've been stuck in your traffic, and there's a lot of upside here. So we in the Commerce Committee, Representative Harrison will tell you about this. Are kind of chewing on how we go forward with the idea of developing our blue economy. But thank you for that comment. I'm looking to see if we've got any other hands raised. Rep. Gibson, holler, I'm missing someone. Okay, seeing none. We can move along here to question number 6, Office of Innovation. So Dan, I did not understand your response.
The written response?
Yeah.
Anything in particular that you were?
Well, the Office of Innovation, it really doesn't say what it's going to be.
Well, I just want to, CT Next, as we've described and as you're aware, did not receive bond funding. So we went into a mode where we now have to figure out what to do with CT Next. As you know, we're speaking to all of you about potentially bringing it into the DECD. It's a legislatively prescribed program. So we need to do that in cooperation with all of you, and we're happy to do that. The Office of Innovation within the DECD is one option we'd like to discuss. Now, if your question is what would the work do? It would be so it would be to continue the work of CT Next. CT Next was focused on 4 streams of activity, which we would seek to continue to support. The first is access to talent. This is working with our higher ed, training the workforce of our future. This is helping to place interns in our startup growing companies, just continuing to make sure that our companies can find the people they need to grow. The second is networks and networking. This is supporting both informal and formal networks which have formed throughout the state. Sometimes they are informal networks that might be, in a certain geography. Sometimes they're more formal networks that might form around a certain vertical, insurance or fintech or something like that. Third bucket is mentorship and mentoring. That's technical assistance that's partnering growth stage startup companies with folks who have done it before to help them continue to scale. And the last piece, and it truly is last because I consider this to be a lagging indicator, it's access to capital. That's supporting these angel investment networks and groups that are providing capital to these more emerging businesses. So the goal is to continue the work, but we're going to have to go through a period of transition.
Okay, so basically, yeah, because I didn't quite follow that here, is to continue to do what CT Next is doing, but to do it on the appropriation side of the ledger.
That's correct. And just to be clear, we're not asking for that appropriation in this cycle.
There's nothing here.
We would seek that. There's not room. We would seek to ask that. We would seek that next cycle.
Okay, and I'm just curious. So, in terms of what you would be asking for, because there were some sizable numbers that we had when we stood this thing up.
Yeah, when CT Next was originally formed, it was formed with $67 million of bond funding, and then reauthorized. Someone on the team might have the exact number. I think it was 60. I'd have to get you that to be sure I'm going from memory. Sorry, was it 65?
64, yeah.
64. Thanks, Dave. But we have not determined the budget we would ask for yet. We are working on that now.
Okay, and so my question is to those, and are there 5 or 7 I know it's New Haven, New London. I have the list here.
5 or 7 what?
Locations where you had the CT Next program.
So Dave probably has that history better than I. We did go to market focusing on certain urban cores. I thought there were 4 of them. So let me hand it over to Dave, who was working with the program and can speak to it.
Absolutely, Commissioner, and thank you, Senator, for the question. So I believe you're referring to the innovation places that were designated under CT Next, of which there were 4. There was an open application that went across the entire state, invited many different communities. I believe there were like 13 initial applications that came in for that program when it was first rolled out, circa 2017 or thereabouts. Ultimately, there were 4 innovation places that were formally designated. That included New London, Bryan, Hartford, East Hartford, Stanford, and New Haven were the 4. There was a possibility of doing a second round of innovation places that was contemplated and when the bond funding was authorized back in 2019, but that ultimately didn't move forward in terms of like opening a second round.
But we should also be clear here, Senator Hartley, the strategy changed. And I actually, for one, support the change in strategy. So what Dave just described was when this was originally set up in 2016, leveraging place, a physical place, as a mechanism and a catalyst for innovation. That made sense pre-pandemic. I don't think it still matters. So innovation places, physical place is still a part of CT Next and will still be a part of innovation places. The Office of Innovation or whatever we call it. But I think it's important to note that post-pandemic, we saw an emergence of these networks of collaboration, which have nothing to do with physical place. It can be virtual, it can be hybrid, or yes, it can still be in person. So a lot of the work that we're now describing, supporting, is ecosystem building. It's fostering an ecosystem of innovation and a culture of risk tolerance. It isn't as aligned specifically to a physical place in a physical city or location. And I think that's important because that's the way the world went.
Yeah, okay, I understand that, and we have to stay current. But my question is, so what's happening in those 4 locations? Have they gone dark? What?
No, so I'll give my understanding, and then I'll ask Dave to give the specifics. That program and those funds were deployed, and quite a bit of work was done. And my understanding is a lot of the places that were built or supported or organizations were supported are still ongoing. But that stream of activity largely ended and evolved going into and coming out of the pandemic. As you can imagine, physical place as a mechanism for innovation came to a halt at the height of the pandemic. But let me give it to Dave, and please feel free to correct anything I said. I wasn't.
No. I mean that's right, Commissioner. I mean, in terms of innovation, so it is important, Senator, to sometimes distinguish between innovation places and other CT Next programming that took place outside of just those 4 innovation places in particular. But with respect to the innovation places program, as what the Commissioner stated earlier, there was not additional bond funding that was released, to CT Next, and so as a consequence, the flow of funding out to the innovation places through that program has kind of come to a halt. As of this current moment of the 4 innovation places organizations that were stood up, I believe that Launch Hartford still kind of remains in existence. It's been able to draw on some funding from some other sources and is still offering kind of like a minimum level of kind of programming and services, but that's not being directly funded by CT Next at this time. I suppose the ongoing activity there is kind of a legacy of something that CT Next helped to seed, but it's innovation places at the present moment isn't really operating formally.
So, as we know it, Hartford might be the only one that still has some kind of activity, and the others kind of, I don't know if it was COVID that was it or the change in the program, but they basically ended.
I think that's fair to say, Senator. I mean, I would say that there were investments made in those innovation places over the course of the life of the innovation places program that kind of still persist and kind of like projects that were seeded that kind of continue to operate. But the investment structure of the innovation places programs and the boards that kind of like directed funding on behalf of CT Next, that sort of kind of grant making structure has drawn to a close. But there is a legacy that's been left, I would say, by the program in each of the the different communities. Like for instance, just to give one example, the Make Haven Makerspace in New Haven was an effort that was seeded by CT Next and Innovation Places program in that community, and that continues to be an organization that develops and that serves entrepreneurs and creators in that community, kind of to this day. And there are a number of other places like that across the Florida different innovation places where we still continue to see activity. But Innovation Places as a kind of new grant making concern has effectively wound down as of now.
Yeah, got it. You like to know that your investment, took seed and is bearing fruit as opposed to, going dark. That's all.
For sure. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, where I'm coming from. I don't see any other questions on that. Item number 7 was on the Career Connect, and I think Kelly really drilled down on that with us. Bobby, if I'm missing anyone, just give me a holler. Item 8 was Jobs CT, an update on the program. And so I mentioned to you in, your original hearing to us, the feedback that I'm getting is, we've got small companies, and they're the ones that are so often don't have access to capital, and they need that bridge, and they're so tenuous, and by and large are many times, minority companies or women, founders, and they're saying to me, we're not going to create 25 jobs. We're just never going to do that. So we can't access Jobs CT, and what's left for us is like a grant program, or actually, excuse me, loan program primarily, and we need a bridge, and it's not that.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say, so you're absolutely right. Job CT would not be the right mechanism for a company of that profile. Boost is available to them, which is our small business lending program at attractive rates. And then the work of CT Next. CT Next did grant making, non-dilutive financing opportunities for startup companies. And it was typically done through business plans institutions. CT Next didn't have the resources, nor will it have the resources to evaluate, every possible opportunity. But typically through business plan competitions or similar mechanisms, it was providing non-dilutive financing, a form of non-dilutive financing to startup businesses, and we seek to see that continue. Now that will be dependent on budget.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think you hear me too. That
I do.
Yeah, the Boost is a small business loan program.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and so in many instances they're not looking to incur, more debt on their balance sheet. It's those very tenuous, first year that kind of makes or breaks these folks, these entrepreneurs.
But I just want to make one point that I do think is important, Senator Hartley, which is, we don't have, I said it before, but I'll amplify it. We don't have the resources to evaluate really early stage businesses. That's what venture capital firms do, and have a whole team that does that. So I will tell you, companies are always asking for grants, and I understand it. I mean, that's the best kind of financing there is, right? But it can also be a very inefficient use of state resources if ultimately the companies don't have any high degree of likelihood for success. Which is why I think it's just important to do it through business plan competitions or similar mechanisms, which would be the idea here.
Yeah, I hear you, and I appreciate it. We also, live the other side too.
And by the way, I should do a plug for Connecticut Innovations here. That's more for technology companies, but that is also our state venture firm, which is also an available resource.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't hear, quite frankly, from CI enough. And that might be instructive, I think, for the appropriations team as well as the commerce. I don't see any other questions, Bobby. I don't know if I'm missing hands from people. But listen, I'm looking at the clock as it's ticking here. I did want to go over to question 11 if my colleagues are okay with that. And that was on the tournament. Yeah, so travelers. So we put in 150K, and that's not a lot of money, but it's a state investment. It's taxpayer dollars. And I see your answer that the decisions on how they engage with other businesses are not made by the state. No, they're not. But I guess, my view is in this conversation with them, we might want to be emphasizing or asking how they view and engage and try to support, this being Connecticut, this being taxpayer dollar infusion, support our small businesses.
Yeah. And I do think it's important to note, we do support that event. And our response is accurate. That support does that not allow us to dictate terms, it doesn't allow us to necessarily influence them, other than what you just described. I am part of those conversations, and will be leading up to the event itself. And I will always be an advocate for our small businesses. So I would be happy to carry that flag.
Thank you. I would really appreciate it. And let's hope to have some reaction to that as we go on. Yeah, and so colleagues, if there is nothing else, I would like to at this point turn it over to none other than our CMO, our Chief Manufacturing Officer, who has from time to time been called the Czar. Where are you, Paul? Yeah, so anyway, things like the IMF, that's very important for us to be versed on. And so I ask you, Paul, you put out an annual report. Do you not?
Yes, absolutely. The MIF issues an annual report at the basically on January 1st that covers the previous fiscal year. So it'll cover the July to June period of 2022 and 2023, and that was released on January 1st.
Yeah, and so I have to confess I have not read it yet, and so I'm making a note to myself here to have some good reading, because I'm sure it will be. But tell us what is most important for us to understand about the things that you're working on, and maybe the challenges that you're finding.
Sure. So absolutely. The signature programs in the Manufacturing Innovation Fund continue to be our grant programs. The Manufacturing Voucher Program, which provides up to $100,000 matching grant for our manufacturers, and these are manufacturers that are 100 employees or less, was in my first year as the Chief Manufacturing Officer, we invested $2 million into that community. In year two, through a series of just being out and about, talking with manufacturers and communicating with them and letting them know what programs are available, we invested $7 million. So we had started with our original $2 million investment. We added a $5 million investment in 2023. And in 2023, our entire MIF budget was $10 million. So it was 50% of that budget went to one program, which is that voucher program for small businesses. What's really great about that program is that we're seeing a 4-to-1 and 5-to-1 ratio of investment. So every $100,000 we invest, we're seeing $400,000 to $500,000 invested by our smaller manufacturers into their businesses and their operations. We have a bunch of case studies in the annual report this year, and I'll give you a case study of a manufacturer that we gave a $100,000 investment to for some additive manufacturing work that reduced their time on tool making from 18 weeks to 3 weeks. It was a significant cost savings, and because of that, they became a favored vendor of Pratt & Whitney and received a $10 million order. So I'll invest $100,000 in a small manufacturer and let them get $10 million orders all the time. And so we're seeing significant usage in that program. We just allocated another $5 million to the program, and we're in the process of getting that funding over to CCAT, who manages the program for us. And right now we have a $2.2 million backlog. We started accepting applications in December, and it's taken us a while to get the funding through the system, but it should be done this week or next week. And but right now we have 2.2 million ready to go and ready to be approved and evaluated. So I'm looking right now at about a $9 million investment in the next fiscal year, of which we're allocated 15 million. So a large portion of our investment is going into the manufacturing voucher program, but again, it's having a significant impact on the growth of our smaller manufacturers. Additionally, the incumbent worker training program we're getting record levels of participation in all of our grant programs. So we currently run 8 grant programs through the Connecticut Center for Advanced Technology, the Incumbent Worker Training Grant, which provides manufacturers with matching grants up to $50,000 a year and $100,000 lifetime. Again, is doing very, very well. That's available to manufacturers of 1,000 employees or less, because quite frankly, that's where we really have a need to make sure that we're investing in training, especially for Industry 4.0 technologies, right? As we introduce new technologies into the manufacturing sector, we have to make sure that training comes first and technology comes second. So we're investing heavily in there. We have, of course, our apprenticeship wage reimbursement programs, our internship wage reimbursement programs. We have Siri and cybersecurity analysis programs. We'll go in and do a gap analysis around cybersecurity. And all of these programs are only available to manufacturers with 300 employees or less. We have funding for Industry 4.0 adoption, $25,000 grants for matching grants for Industry 4.0 adoption, which will be actually running out of money soon. And the MIF board is looking at reallocating funds into that. And those are our kind of our signature legacy programs. Additionally, I talked about the FIRST Robotics program and how we funded FIRST Robotics. We're still funding through the MIF a Hearts and Minds advertising campaign, which was wildly successful. In the first year that we ran the campaign, we ran it in conjunction with the Office of Workforce Strategy, and we made sure that the marketing messages were aligned. And I think, Kelly, in the first 3 to 4 months of launching the Career Connect, 50% of the traffic came from the manufacturing sector, which it came from the manufacturing marketing program that we're working on. Right now, we run 36 different programs through the Office of Manufacturing, 12 that are focused on innovation, 14 on workforce development, 3 of them around supply chain development. And we have a very successful Connex database program where we're connecting suppliers to each other and from Connecticut, but we're also connecting them to the country. We've had Air Force bases in Colorado qualify aerospace manufacturers in the state of Connecticut. So we're going to get some opportunity to bring business into the state of Connecticut. And we're allowing manufacturers to shorten their supply chains as well. So in the Manufacturing Innovation Fund, we continue to make these significant investments in the small to medium-sized manufacturing community. And I will tell you that we've had several different situations where, especially with MVP, where we've run out of money just because of the timing of the funds and timing of when the bond commission meets and when it's been made available to us. But we're seeing record levels of participation month after month in these programs. So we are having a significant impact on creating jobs, creating growth, and creating opportunity for our small manufacturers.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, go ahead, Lucy. You got your hand up.
It's just more of a quick question and a comment. First of all, thank you, Paul, for your description here. It's really great. It's not something I'm super familiar with. I'm more a technology gal. But I did have a company reach out to me who was looking to do relocating to Connecticut. And I did put them in touch with the deputy commissioner because I do think that this would be an interesting thing. But do you all do grants for companies that are relocating and looking at building a footprint here in Connecticut that are in the manufacturing space? The reason that Connecticut, the reason Connecticut was targeted was this company is looking at doing a little bit of the aerospace, and they have heard that there's a big group at Sikorsky that are getting laid off, and they thought this would be an excellent opportunity to get some great talent. But anyway, so that's my first question.
Yeah, and I have talked to that company. The fact that thinking that people at Sikorsky are going to get laid off is a myth, because Sikorsky has gotten, while they lost FARA, they're going to be getting significant Black Hawk contracts, and the Army will make sure that Sikorsky is going to be fully operational and strong for the foreseeable future. But to go back to your original question, Advanced Connecticut is responsible for any new companies that are coming into the state of Connecticut. So they are the front line of working with those folks to be able to find a location and then to be able to get the support that they need. As Commissioner O'Keefe had talked about, our programs are prescriptive. So we have a job CT program where if they're going to create more than 25 jobs, we have that tax program. And we have some other sales tax use programs that we offer, but we do not offer any grants or any other non-dilutive funding that are available to companies coming in. And in fact, the grant programs that I offer through the Manufacturing Innovation Fund state that you have to have more than 3 full-time employees, you have to be in business for more than 3 years, and 51% of your manufacturing must be done here in the state of Connecticut. So even if you're looking to reshore manufacturing, the way the program guidelines read, you're not eligible for the funding. We've had conversations with our board, the Manufacturing Innovation Fund board, about reshoring and smaller companies that are looking to come into Connecticut, and they have voted not to change the parameters of our manufacturing voucher program, but have encouraged me to look at some additional programs that we might be able to use in those cases. But when 9 million of my $15 million is going to my manufacturing voucher program, and I want to do FIRST Robotics, and I want to do advertising, and I want to do women in manufacturing and veterans in manufacturing, and all of these other programs, we run out of money pretty quickly, and with what we would really like to do. So the answer to your question is no, we don't offer any grant funding for companies like that coming in, but we do make sure that we're servicing them very, very well. And again, I had met with that company, and that it eventually gets around to me, and I had met with that company, and my next introduction to them is going to be over to Advanced CT, so Advanced CT can do their good work. Yeah.
Great.
I just want to add
sorry.
quickly. Sorry, I just don't want that answer to sound discouraging. Those are my favorite kinds of introductions. I spend a significant amount of my day working with companies outside the state, talking to them about moving here. There's all kinds of resources that we can make available, including just handholding. So I just want to encourage everyone, either here in this forum or listening to this forum, please always feel free to refer over companies that might be considering Connecticut.
Yeah, and to that point,
you said that, Commissioner.
No, not at all.
That's what I love to do.
To that point, Ted Fisher, who runs Advanced Manufacturing and Advanced CT, has 177 companies in his pipeline. So there's 177 manufacturing companies that are looking or interested to come to the state of Connecticut. So there is no lack of companies that are looking at Connecticut to plant their flag in many different areas: clean energy, aerospace, offshore wind, all of those areas. We're hot right now. There's
it's a good segue to my second question very quickly. I have also really been focusing on the EV initiative, and there are a lot of great companies here in our state that are producing better batteries, better things like that around clean energy. And I'm wondering, within your team, do you have a specific focus in on those companies?
Yes, absolutely. So we just recently, Advanced CT announced a company called Nanoramic, which provides technology that extends the life of lithium-ion batteries. They've received a $47 million federal grant, and they will be moving into Bridgeport. We have companies in Southbury that are doing EV charging stations, and we're supporting them as well through the programs that we have. I have responsibility for the clean economy and economic development for the clean economy, and I have a clean economy program manager, Andrew Levine. Andrew and I were talking today. There's 2 areas in the state of Connecticut that are available for funding because we've closed coal-fired energy plants. One is Bridgeport, the other one is out in Montville, Ledyard, Montville, Connecticut area. And the Department of Energy has significant funding opportunities for new energy companies to come into the state. So we're engaging at the federal level with what's called the Office of Manufacturing and Energy Supply Chains in the Department of Energy, or more importantly known as MESC, to understand what those funding opportunities are, and then to be able to start to attract companies, new clean economy companies, to those two areas, and to be able to, along with that, wrap in federal incentives to help support them to come here. So we're looking very, very strongly at gathering as much federal dollars as we can to come into the state, and especially in the clean energy area, where we have these distressed areas that have lost a coal-fired plant, and there's a lot of money to be made and available.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Rep. Dathan. So, Paul, how many programs you say you run?
Well, we're running 36 programs. We just added about 6 this month. Either some things are kind of event-based programs, and others are kind of legacy longer programs that we've put in place. But just to give you an idea of some programs, we just launched a Women's Manufacturing Advisory Council called Elevate Her. And it is the council is set up right now of about 50 women. It's open to as many as would like to participate. And there are 3 teams. The 3 teams, the acronym is actually NED, and a little irony there, but it's networking, experience, and development. And we have groups of women who are working on what are the barriers for women in manufacturing and what are some of the solutions. And they're advising the Office of Manufacturing on how we can create better experiences, better networking, and better development opportunities for women in manufacturing to grow women in manufacturing. So that's an initiative that doesn't require a lot of funding from the Manufacturing Innovation Fund, but the Office of Manufacturing is running that program. Additionally, we just sponsored a manufacturing resource fair. And what I mean by that is that we have so many programs that we use to support our manufacturing sector that from time to time we overserve our manufacturers by overwhelming them with too many things. So we are creating a manufacturing resource fair where we're going to have all of these resources in one room, and we're going to invite manufacturers in to say, here's all the people that can help you. Bring your team in, go around, meet with them, understand how they can help you, and you can do it all in a day versus, trying to get, having me basically overwhelm you with email introductions to, hey, this group can help you. You have workforce issues over here, we can help you with that. Supply chain issues, we can help you here. We can help you here, we can help you here. And so sometimes we're too helpful in trying to, and we overwhelm our manufacturers. So the resource fair is something that we're looking at doing. We're doing pilot programs. One of the biggest thing that we need to do is that we know we have a tremendous workforce development system, but the biggest area where the Office of Manufacturing, the Chief Manufacturing Officer, should focus is on industry engagement. Because the more people from industry that we have engaged and tied to our efforts, the tighter the system is going to be. And it really needs to be driven from the industry on back through the system. So training people for training's sake is great, but training people to fill industry jobs is really what our objective is. And we need to get better engagement through the industry and through manufacturers. So my focus is really going to be on how do I get out there and engage with manufacturers and get them to open their minds, quite frankly, in 3 areas. First is workforce development. And are they using 100% of the workforce to be able to fill their needs? And I will tell you that they're not. We know that women are underserved. We know veterans are underserved. We know people of color are underserved. We know that people with disabilities are underserved. We know people who don't have accessibility issues are underserved. And reentry people are underserved as well back into the community. So those are all initiatives that we're working with on, and we're working very closely with Kelly in the Office of Workforce Strategy and her DEIA committee and her DEIA officer. Around innovation, we need to continually drive innovation in the manufacturing sector because we're never going to solve our problems with people. So we're looking at funding a 6-year, hopefully a significant amount of money into driving industrial automation through the manufacturing sector. And my partners in there are Constep, CCAT, and the University of Connecticut. And so I work very closely with them because they're the experts. They're all the experts in all of this. But I provide vision, strategy, leadership, and funding. They provide the execution for programs. And I really want a 6-year program that is going to drive industrial automation and drive innovation in the manufacturing sector so we can get machines to do the work for people that we're just never going to be able to hire because they don't exist. And then the third area is around supply chain development. How do I, when I talk about the supply chain, I really talk about how do I reduce the cost of doing business in the state. So we really look at how do we shorten supply chains? How do we, get people to do business with each other? We have a manufacturing company that was that was working with a company in Texas to make parts for them and paying for the parts to be shipped from Texas to Connecticut. Through our Connex database system, they found a company in Bristol. So they changed from Texas to Bristol. Now we have Connecticut companies doing business with Connecticut companies. And so we're making those connections. We're getting people to shorten their supply chains. We have 3 federal grants that we have recently been awarded in the last year. One is from the Department of Defense, which is a second grant around digital model initiative, and which is around digital transformation. So without getting too technical, it's basically eliminating paper in the manufacturing relationship between the large manufacturers such as Pratt & Whitney, Electric Boat, Sikorsky, and Collins, and their supply chain, making everything digital. And what we're seeing is, times it used to take us 3 months to get a part on a machine. They can do it now in 3 days or 4 days. So we're seeing this, and the quality is better. And again, without getting too technical, we're working on a federal grant around that program, and we are fully engaged with Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, RTX at very, very high levels with all of our partners. The second is a Department of Energy state leadership grant. We were one of 12 states to win an energy grant, and it's all around reducing carbon emissions and improving energy efficiency in the industrial sector here in the state. And the third grant was a regional tech hub grant. So the Department of Commerce, through the Economic Development Authority, has awarded 31 strategy and implementation grants and 29 strategy grants. Connecticut is the recipient of a strategy grant. There were over 400 applications for regional tech hub grants. And so out of that, 50 were awarded. We didn't make the varsity team, meaning we didn't get a strategy and implementation grant. We made the JV team, but we made the team. And if you know anything about Connecticut, is we're going to convince them that we belong on the varsity team. So we're working very closely to hire a regional innovation officer that's funded by the grant that is going to help us develop our full strategy around the digital transformation in the entire manufacturing sector, which is a follow-on to the potential for us to get a $65 million grant. And we're doing that in conjunction with the state of Rhode Island. So we're working a lot with the state of Rhode Island, especially in around digital transformation and in the defense sector, because we share a lot with Electric Boat in the defense sector. And we're also working with them in the offshore wind industry and standing up the offshore wind industry, which is another one of my, again, having the clean economy responsibilities. We're also managing the Connecticut Wind Collaborative, which is a 501c3 that we created to manage the strategic roadmap for offshore wind, which the governor announced in October. So we have the manufacturing strategic plan, we have the MIF annual report, we have the strategic plan for offshore wind, the strategic roadmap for offshore wind that we are executing against. And again, it's those 42 programs that we're executing, all to grow the manufacturing sector here in the state.
Yeah. So, hey, Paul, I was just going to ask you. I know the clock is ticking. It's Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what did we do before you were here? Who did this? How did this happen?
None of this was done before. I shouldn't say that. The legacy programs in the Manufacturing Innovation Fund were done. So, Colin Cooper's last MIF board meeting and my first MIF board meeting that overlapped, we approved 7 new programs in that meeting. So Colin laid the foundation for this, but it's really come in the last 2 years. The Office of Manufacturing has grown from a chief manufacturing officer to when I'm finished with the grant programs, we'll have 9 people. All of those people are not funded by the DECD operating budget, only I am. All those other programs are either funded by the admin account that comes with the Manufacturing Innovation Fund, which is funds that are required to be used to grow and support the Manufacturing Innovation Fund, or the federal grants that are all durational positions. So they're not zero impact to the operating budget of the state of Connecticut. Well, we have 8 people that are now working on manufacturing that are funded by those 2 buckets of money.
Yeah,
So.
thank you, Paul. And that's really, kudos to you and music to our ears. Hey, Robin, go ahead. You got your hand up.
Thank you. And thank you, Paul. I wanted to ask you if you wouldn't mind just expounding a little more on what we're doing with offshore wind.
Sure,
What's
absolutely.
happening
So,
with that?
yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. It is offshore wind is a once in a generational opportunity for the state of Connecticut. I think, as we all know, we've invested money in the state pier in New London for us to be able to marshal offshore wind projects. We are one of two locations in the entire United States that is currently working on the assembly and the installation of offshore wind. In New Bedford, Massachusetts, and New London, Connecticut are the two areas. We just finished the South Fork Wind Project, which was 12 wind turbines that were all assembled and put out. Basically all, marshaling is the word for assembling and doing all that assembly work, getting them on boats, getting them out to the wind farm and getting them installed. All that work has been done out of New London. However, the South Fork Wind Project is generating electricity for the state of New York. However, the state of New York can't do the project without Connecticut because they don't have a port to be able to do any of this. So everything's done out of the Port of New London, where right now we've created the Connecticut Wind Collaborative, which is going to work on 4 things. It's going to work on maximizing our ports and infrastructure, our real estate infrastructure around offshore wind. So we have 3 deep water ports. We have New London, we have New Haven, and we have Bridgeport. So we're working with all 3 of those ports on opportunities that we have to expand and grow the offshore wind industry. The second is around workforce and building a workforce for the offshore wind industry. We're estimated that by 2035, we have the opportunity to create up to 8,000 jobs in offshore wind. We're building out an offshore wind supply chain, which all of these parts they're currently being manufactured overseas, and they're being shipped over on boats. There are several of those containers can be manufactured regionally. We're leading a 5-state coalition, which is New Hampshire, Maine, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut, around building out a regional supply chain for offshore wind. And Connecticut is leading that discussion. We've also signed a 9-state MOU. So now we're adding New Jersey, Maryland, North Carolina, and Virginia to those 5 states. And we also have 4 federal agencies: Department of Energy, Department of Interior, Department of Commerce, and there's always one other I forget, but there's 4 Interior, Department of Interior. I said that already, but there's 4 agencies that we're working on to do that as well. And then, of course, research and development and incorporating the University of Connecticut and our significant research abilities in offshore wind. The next project that's queued up is Revolution Wind. It is 65 wind turbines that are going out around the Block Island area, and that will start powering homes here in Connecticut and Rhode Island. So that will start at the end of 2024. We expect to be generating energy from that wind farm in 2025, and we'll provide significant energy. We're working right now on where that energy is going to come on shore and how we're going to get that energy into the grid. And Ørsted has just announced that they have approved, and the state of New York has approved the Sunrise Wind Project, which is an 85 turbine project that will begin after Revolution, which means that we will be marshaling offshore wind at the State Pier in New London from now until 2029, 2030. And then we just recently sent a new procurement out in conjunction with Rhode Island and Massachusetts for 6.9 gigawatts of offshore wind energy that, should we approve those, will have State Pier running again until well into the 2030s to 2033, 2034. So you can see this opportunity for us to stand up the offshore wind industry, for us to be able to create jobs, because all the work will be done in New London. And I will tell you that Maine announced that they want to build a port and they want to invest $500 million, which is 2.5 times what we've invested. New Jersey is trying to build a port for offshore wind, and they're investing $600 million, which is more than 3 times what we've invested. So I will tell you that the investment that we've made in New London around offshore wind is a significant investment that is going to be a bargain as we look forward. I've had this conversation with the governor. I've had this conversation with the governor that as much as that project we've invested in there, it's going to be one of the best decisions that we have ever made. And this is going to be a tremendous opportunity for us to really stand up the clean economy with Connecticut as the epicenter of the
Yes.
offshore wind industry. So
I absolutely agree, and thank you so much for those details. And I'm excited to see Connecticut leading on this. One of the questions I have, because you did say things are being manufactured overseas and being brought over when they could be done here regionally. So I'm wondering, are we looking at gravity-based foundations? What are we looking at when we talk about that piece of offshore wind and jobs? Because concrete, gravity-based.
yeah, no, I understand, and I know the debate amongst that. We're not driving any of those conversations. Those are driven by the developers as to, if, for example, in Maine, because of the shelf being so deep, they look at floating offshore wind. And I know there's been conversations with Ørsted around what kind of bases that they're using, but that's not, those are decisions that are made by developers and not by the state. So we don't really, they tell us what they're going to put there. We make sure that we support it to get it out there and to make sure that we're supporting the workforce and the supply chain and things like that.
Well, I hope we're also having conversations going in the other direction as well, since it's our people in need of jobs and, looking at what's best, what's going to bring the most jobs. When we look at the environment, making sure that we're doing what's best for the environment, the ocean, and for all the animals there that we would, have to coexist with, so to speak, in doing this work. So I just want to put that out there because I feel like we have a responsibility and we definitely get to weigh in and help to dictate, what it is developers are doing in our state.
Understood. Absolutely. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Rep. Porter. Yes, Rep. Simmons?
Thank you, Senator Hartley. I just kind of want to piggyback off of what the Rep. Porter was just talking about. Just kind of brought something to mind. Are we actually doing anything with regards to geothermal heating? I know that the discussion for the most part has been around solar, has been around when building wind turbines and things of that nature. But has there been any discussions around geothermal heating? So
yes.
I think that's something that's been a new trend that's been going around. And I think that's something that would be really prevalent here in Connecticut and create probably 10,000 more jobs than the latter. So I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
Yes, thank you, Representative Sims. So yes, we are working very closely with Department of Energy and Environmental Protection on geothermal energy systems. We are right now, DEEP has a pilot project on geothermal going into Wallingford, Connecticut. And we're looking at technology has evolved in geothermal where we can actually have connected systems. So the technology was once where it was one-off, right? If you wanted to do a geothermal in a house, you could do it, but you couldn't do it in a commercial building that had 5 or 6 things like operations. The technology has now evolved to the point where we can. And so we have active projects right now that are test projects to see the impact of geothermal. And we're DEEP is doing studies on return on investment as to what the investment is going to be to do it and what the return will be and what the payback will be. We'll start in the residential area with that, and then we'll look and see what we can do with commercial and industrial applications around geothermal. But we are just in the beginning of these phases of talking about geothermal energy. And again, we have a pilot project going on in Wallingford. So we are having those conversations. We're moving along. It is DECD and DEEP working together around geothermal. We meet, at minimum, we meet monthly to talk about where we are and to talk about where we're going to take advantage of this energy technology here in the state. So we're there and we're starting the process. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Paul. Now, I mean, I'm just super excited to hear that, and I look forward to the continued conversations around that. So, if there's any information that you can forward me that I can actually kind of look over, I would greatly appreciate it. Thanks again, Senator Hartley.
Great. I will talk to DEEP about that. Yep.
Thank you. So listen, folks, it looks like we're past our bedtime here on a Friday afternoon. I just wanted to say, Paul, thank you so much, because we don't have an opportunity in all truth to hear from you and hear, about all this stuff. If you could share with the committee, myself, I'm very interested on this information about the level for council, these women in manufacturing, about the challenge, please share. That would be so helpful. And my last question actually is to our commissioner, and I will leave off the designate on his title, but did you give us? Yeah, I saw you gave us your response on the ARPA, and I'm going to have to, kind of walk through that carefully. But did you give us do you have any carry forward? Is there any carry forward money that you've got here in the budget?
Liz Shapiro is still on. Liz, do you know the answer to that?
There is some carry forward, I believe, from last fiscal year, but honestly, I'd have to double check for you. We have been giving out grants to theaters for fiscal year I'm looking up 22 and 21 and 22 with carry forward $3 million each year, so a total of $6 million. But we do not have any for the fiscal year, our current fiscal year 24, there isn't any. So I will double check on that for you. I think that's about the extent of the carry forward. I don't think anything this year.
Well, okay, that's important. Thanks. And Evelyn, I know you'll be kind of triaging this for us, if you would.
Yeah, easy to get the actual figures for you. I just don't have them to hand right this minute.
Thanks, appreciate that. Okay, I don't see any other hands. Hey, Rep Gibson, I'll punt over to you, sir.
Well, hi, Senator Hartley. I think that's it. I think we pretty much have done what we've come out here to do. And that no one else has any other questions. And I think I want to thank everyone for presenting today. You did an outstanding job, and thank you, Senator Hartley, for leading the majority of the meeting today. I really appreciate that.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. Hey, best. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, everyone. Bye now.
Okay.
Have a good weekend too.
Bye-bye.